A little bit of movement, a little bit of dancing, a little bit of jumping. And I go back to me for this. So the reason we do that is to take our mind into a childlike state. We know that we learn better when we're childlike. And that's what really today is all about. We're going to discuss how memory works. We're going to discuss the why of memory, like why you would want to have a great memory. We're going to talk about how memory and intelligence work together. So improving your memory will actually increase your intelligence. Who here wants to be more intelligent?
Yes.
Yeah. So intelligence is something that we all desire. We'll also discover what intelligence is. There's two components or two parts to intelligence. And as we understand it, we can work out intelligence. We'll also discuss the 4 parts of the mind, the 4 things that the mind does. And then we'll also, after all that introduction, we're then going to go into some tools and skills. And the 4 skills or tools that we'll be looking at today are 1, spaced repetition. The second one is, and this is a learning technique that if you try to learn everything in one instance, it doesn't stay with you and you don't retain it as long. However, if you do spaced learning, meaning if you learn it the first now, then a week later, and then you space out your learning, you can actually retain more. And we'll look at some studies around that, or we'll discuss them. We won't spend a lot of time on spaced repetition. That'll probably be more in the follow-up sessions where we look at that. The other tools we're looking at are the memory palace, the memory pegs, and also there's another one, it's a visual stack. And the one that we'll be looking at mostly for here and now is the conversation stack. But then we'll be adapting that to public speaking, because once you've worked out how to use this, then you can take it into your public speaking. And so if you've wondered how does Josh get up there and speak for like an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, no notes? I'm going to mute everyone up. So how does he speak for so long without notes? This is the reason. The reason I can do that is because I've practiced these memory skills consistently over and over again, and I've gotten very proficient at it, very good at it. And those of you who were at the demonstration the other day, we had 30 items and I memorized 24 of them. I messed up on 6, but once I revisited all 6 of those ones, I had them. And once I had all 30 of them, they were there, they were locked in my mind, and I wouldn't forget it again. And if I use spaced repetition, I could remember those things indefinitely. However, because it's just a demonstration and because they're useless items, I just throw those out of my head and my mind is now ready to take on new items. So we're going to actually look into how to do memory pegs, and we're going to do them with each other. So you'll get practice with the memory, and then you'll practice with a teammate. So we'll send you away in little breakout groups, and you'll practice one-on-one with somebody the memory skills that we're discussing. So you can actually get a working model of how to do it. And once you do that, then you'll be able to go home and then practice on your own, practice with your family. We'll also look at how you can make sure that it's indelibly imprinted into your mind through the process of teaching other people. And so this is another great memory strategy is you teach somebody. Like, it's great to learn it yourself, but if you go out there and teach somebody else, what you're doing is you're reinforcing it in your own mind and in your own heart. I don't know if there's any scriptorians out there, but the Apostle Paul in the Bible said, when thou teachest another, teachest thou not thyself. And I know that's old English, but what he's really saying is, when you teach another person, who are you really teaching? You're teaching yourself. You're reinforcing every principle, every concept in your own mind, in your own heart. You're embodying it. So when you teach it, you learn it to a deeper level. So if you can learn it to the level of teaching someone else, you've learned it deeply. So that's really an overview of what today's about. And so before we get underway, there will be a couple of breaks during the day. We'll probably break for about 5 to 10 minutes a couple of times through this presentation. And then afterwards, then we'll have lunch at 1:30 when we finish. That's when you'll head off and go have some lunch. There'll also be a component, a closed eye process, where we go through and I'll repattern your mind around memory. And that's a really good process that you can go through, which will help you with your mind. So there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to do today. So I hope you're ready to get going. I hope you're ready to buckle up and put effort into what you're learning, and effort and energy into the practicing part. Because if you show up and if you do the practical parts, you will learn more. And we don't want to just learn things in our mind. And if you sit passively, and if you think about school, And what school trained us to do, it trained us to sit in a seat, close our mouth, stay still, and shut up. And then a teacher would then teach. And your job was to sit there, not move, do nothing, just absorb. That's what our school taught us to do. Now, the challenge with that is that our mind doesn't work that way. If you look at children, they want to move, they want to get active. We actually learn on 3 levels. Level number 1 is cognitive. That's your mind. That's the first level of learning. And that's the one that school trained you for. But that's only the first level of learning. The second level learning is the heart. That's the second level. So we go from cognitive, we go from the mind, then into the heart. And what happens there is we get emotion involved in the learning. Now, you'll remember something far more if there's high levels of emotionality. If there's high emotion, you'll definitely remember it. If there's low emotion, if it's mundane, the same as everything else, then you won't remember it. You won't remember what you had for breakfast unless you're like, wow, this is a great breakfast. Those special moments you remember. Think about your life. Think about the special moments in your life, like the birth of a child or getting married, getting divorced. Think about these high emotional events, whether high positive or high negative. Those are the things that are indelibly imprinted into your mind. And you remember and retain memory for those things far greater than you do for other normal things. Like if it's run of the mill, if it's Groundhog Day, so to speak, if it's Groundhog Day, it's just the same. And you don't remember or recall that. Who just joined us? Sylvester. How are you, Sylvester? Floor, is it? Welcome, welcome. All right, I think everyone's here now. So it's good. I don't remember a thing. That's from Richard. He said he doesn't remember a thing that I just said. That's all right. That's why we're going to go over it more than once. You'll find that when we go through a training like this, we don't just talk about it once. We talk about it twice, 3 times, and even talk about it consistently. And so if you hear a story that I've shared before, that's because you didn't get it the first time or the second time. And so I'll continue telling the same story, Richard, till you get it. So that's often how we go. And sometimes it's about repeating trainings. Leonie, you came to the training last year. I think there might be, and Jennifer might have come to this training last year. So there's a couple of people who've repeated from last year. Now, why would they need to repeat a course? Repetition is the mother of all skill. So you want to go over these things again. Don't think that you've just gone to one meeting or one seminar or one webinar and that's it. Your problems are solved. Your retention will be high immediately after. Like the next day, you might feel fantastic. 2 weeks later, you'll start to forget certain things. Now, by revisiting those trainings, you get a reinforcement. And that's why we need to keep revisiting things until we, learn it all. And is it possible to learn everything? Not possible. There's too much. But we keep progressing. We keep moving forward. All right, so let's get into the seminar. And I want to get into the seminar by telling you a couple of stories. And as I tell these stories, I want you to think about your why. What is the reason why you want to develop a great memory? Is it because you want to make a lot of money? Because those with a great memory are able to perhaps expand their mind more, do more things, accomplish more in a day. That's more time management. But memory will help with all processes of the mind. And so you might want to have a great memory because you want to increase your income. Maybe you want to remember people's birthdays and names so you can connect more with other people, so you feel close to them, so that you can bond with people. And maybe that's your purpose. That's your reason why. Maybe your why is growth. Maybe you just want to keep growing. There's so much out there and you want to keep learning it and you want to know as much as possible so that maybe you can, when you're at a party, dinner party, you can dazzle your friends. You can say certain things and have certain facts and have all these key ideas and information in your head that can just dazzle them. Maybe that's your why. I don't know what it is for you, but when I was 14, I sat down in a seminar and I saw a woman and a man at the front. The man was speaking and a woman sat with her back to a whiteboard. And he went around the room and asked for 20 items which he listed on that board. After listing those 20 items on the board, this woman who had her back turned to the board was able to recount every one of those items. And I was shocked. I was like, wow. Like to me, it was amazing. And I thought, with that type of skill, what's not possible? With that type of skill. In fact, I had a conversation with my daughter only about, I suppose it was five years ago, where I said to her that I believe that right here now in my life, I could choose any profession that I wanted and nail it. I believe that. And it's just a belief that I have, but it's also because I've trained my memory. So if I go to university and study, whether it be, to be a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, whatever, I believe that I could pick it up because I have faith in my memory, because I've used and developed that memory over time. And so that was a wonderful epiphany, I guess, that I had, that at, age 39, here I could be anything. And I still had time, 39. I mean, that's a long way from retirement. I still had time to do whatever I wanted to do. Now, isn't that great to have that sort of ability? Anyway, so I'm sitting there in this seminar. I saw this woman do this, and I was thinking to myself at age 14, I want to do that. My father signed us up to the seminar, and we did the seminar. It was a 4-day seminar, and only 1 hour was devoted to memory, which I was really, a bit upset about. I wanted more memory stuff. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to, teach me the skills so I can memorize a poem, so I can memorize quotes, so I can memorize. So, when I public speak, mind you, public speaking was always something that's been dear to my heart. And I wanted to public speak. The trouble was, when I was 14, I had a stutter. So I couldn't string 10 words together without stammering and stuttering. So I had all sorts of problems. So going to this seminar, one, I was able to deal with the stutter, and I did that through a process called affirmations. And the second thing was I learned memory, but only 1 hour. After the seminar, that's where my learning took off, because after the seminar, I began using spaced repetition, and I started practicing the memory pegs. And so I would practice for about maybe half an hour to an hour a week. And I started putting that into practice. And I did that for, several weeks. I found out that the seminar leader was coming back to Tamworth where I lived, and he was going to hold another seminar. However, this woman that had done the 20 items, memorized them the first time, she was no longer there. She was no longer present. And so this woman who was no longer present was no longer in that chair with her back to the wall, to the board to memorize the items. And he didn't have a subject for this. So my father suggested that I go sit there. I think I was 14 or 15 at the time. And my father put my name forward. And I was scared to death. I'm thinking, what, sit out in front of all these people? There's probably 20 or so people there. And they were going to say items. And here I had to memorize them. Anyway, I practiced really hard for a couple of weeks before that meeting. And when the meeting came, I sat in the front chair and I got 19 correct out of 20. And I was so happy with the ones I got correct. But you know what? The one that I got wrong stuck in my mind. And to this day, I remember the one I got wrong. It was twist drill. So 20 items that I was supposed to remember, and I still remember the one that I got wrong. Now, why is it that I've forgotten all the others, and yet I still remember the one that I got wrong? Now, it was because of the high emotionality. And what has more impact? Is it positive, happy emotions? Well, we know they certainly work, but when it's really negative emotions, when it's fear, worry, when it's hurt, upset, we can sometimes remember these things far more clearly. And that's why in the world today, we have so much depression, so much anxiety, because what do people remember? They remember things that don't work. They remember things because your brain is built for survival, and those things you don't have to practice. You don't have to practice feeling sad. You don't. Your brain will do that by itself. Your brain is built for survival. And so if anything negative or bad has happened, your brain will bring those things into your mind without you trying. You don't even have to try. It's like gravity. Gravity, you don't have to think about gravity. You just jump and you come down. Gravity will pull you down. So do your emotions. Your emotions are hardwired to negativity. And why is that? For survival. Because your brain, first and foremost, the function of the mind is to survive. And that's why negativity is very easy. And so here I am still remembering this twist drill, this one that I got wrong. And you know what? I decided from that I would practice and train my memory because I never wanted that experience to happen again. And then it did it. Every next time that I did 20 items, I nailed it every single time. And you know what? This last webinar, I thought I'm going to stretch myself. I'm going to memorize 30 items. And I did it fast. And I also do it without an assistant. And this is how much faith or belief I have in my mind. And yet I got 6 wrong. And you know what? I never want that to happen again. And so guess what I'm going to do next time? I'm going to practice like crazy so that I don't get those 6 wrong. So next time I nail it, because I don't want those negative emotions in my life. Think about it this way. We will do more to avoid negativity than we will to gain a positive outcome. So if you think about what's going to drive you forward in life, look, some people are positively motivated, and the dream of the mansion and the flash car and the beautiful life, the dream of having the partner of their dreams, that's going to motivate them. If you've got some negative motivation in your life, what may drive you more is thoughts of being by yourself, miserable, alone, in pain, destitute, in poverty, whatever it is. But sometimes that thought of that negativity can get you to that point where you think to yourself, I've had enough. I must change, and I must change now. So think about that, negativity and positivity. All right, now I learned about the power of the mind at this seminar that I went to. I learned about memory, and I also learned about the power of the mind, and I learned about visualization. And we're going to use all those skills today when it comes to memory. We're going to use visualization, and I'll show you how to do that so that we can get the most out of our mind. So that there's 3 parts in the memory process, and we're going to discuss all 3 parts. When I was in high school, a friend of mine had an altercation with another boy from another school. And this other boy from the other school said, I'm going to meet you after school, and I'm going to beat your head in. Anyway, this friend came and told me about this, and I said, you know what? I said, I've just done a course, and guess what? I discovered how powerful the mind is. I said, you can win this fight in your mind so that when you go out there, you're going to beat this guy. You're going to beat the snot out of him. You beat the tar out of him. Anyway, I had him convinced. So we spent the day, 3 times during that day, we went and meditated. We went and did it. That's what we did. And so 3 times we went out, we meditated, and I took him through this process of the mind. And I said, here you go. Here's how the mind works. And I'm encouraging him, and I'm taking him through, I'm having him see the perfect fight where he's the victor and he's the winner and he's doing great. And then he said, oh, I'm lacking confidence again. I said, let's do it again. And so right before the fight, we did a 3rd time because the other guy was late. And I said, now's our chance. Now's the time we're going to take you. We're going to elevate you to the next level. Anyway, the boy turned up, and this friend of mine, he was fired up. He was ready to go. He was in state. I got him in the emotional state he needed to be in. He was confident he was going to win the fight. He walked out to meet this guy. He had his hands held high. He went out and bang, bang, bang. 3, 4 good punches, each punch connected. But it wasn't him throwing the punches. It was him receiving the punches. And so he went out there, and I remember him looking around at me in this utter shock because I'd promised him that he was going to win this fight if we used his mind, if we used the mind power. And here he was getting the snot beat out of him, and he turned around with this shocked expression on his face, and I sort of slunk off and disappeared. I learned something very valuable that day. I learned something very valuable. I learned that it's not just confidence that's going to help you get ahead in life. It's also competence. You need to have the pictures in your mind of all the successful things, but you also need to back that up with the training. You see, this other boy that he was fighting, I found out later, had been doing boxing. He'd been doing karate. He had all this training behind him. Is a few pictures in your mind going to make up for years and years of dedicated training? Not a chance. And so I learned a very valuable lesson. And as a young boy, I didn't realize this, that we need both confidence and competence. And so today we're going to look at both sides of it. We're going to look at one, getting you to believe that you've got a good memory, a great memory, a fantastic, a phenomenal memory, but also give you the tools and skills that if practiced, and here's the key, if practiced, will take you through to have a fantastic memory and be able to create magnificent results. Now, before I get too far, get too carried away, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set up a timer. And there's a purpose for this timer. I'm going to set this timer up for every 25 minutes. And at the end of 25 minutes, you and we're going to get up and we're going to jump and move around for at least 2 minutes. And here's the reason. The reason is that movement, physiology, moving your body, motion creates emotion. Motion creates emotion. And so if you want to feel more emotion in your body, then you move your body. You move your body. That's why people choose to exercise, because of the dopamine releases, because they get, the adrenaline, which is norepinephrine. They get that release from the hypothalamus. That's a part of your brain that releases and dispenses the chemicals into your brain and also throughout your body. So what we want to do is we want to activate these emotions. Now, why do we want to activate these emotions? Well, because that increases memory. It increases ability to retain information. Memory is enhanced when we're feeling emotion. Remember what I said at the beginning, when there's high emotional events, we're going to remember more. If there's a birth, a death, some, really successful, you won some money or you lost some money, you got a new job, the job you wanted, or you lost your job. These have very, very powerful effects on our mind, the circumstance in a life. Now, what we're doing with these, you see, your unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. And that's a very important key point. Your mind does not know the difference between reality and fantasy. That's why meditation works. So when someone meditates and they think about a future event, someone's meditating, they're thinking about it, they're using what's called visual rehearsal. That's what sports people do. Sports people visually rehearse something. That's what I was trying to do with my friend with the boxing. I was saying, go out there, visually rehearse it. Okay, but you've got to have competence. The more you do the visual rehearsing, though, your unconscious mind doesn't know that that's just a visual rehearsal. It believes that it's real. Okay, so when we actually really physically move our body and we visualize it, we get a double whammy. What we're doing is we're enhancing the emotional increase of that event. We're increasing the emotion, I should say, of that event, that situation, that circumstance. And so I'm going to set a timer now. And when that timer goes off, you and I are going to get up, no matter what's happening. Actually, I'll set it for 20 minutes. Yeah, let's do it 20. Okay, so that timer's on now to 21 minutes. That timer's on. And when that timer goes off, you and I, we're going to move our body. All right, we're going to get, I know, Namala, I see that look. I see that look in your face. Really? You want me to get out? Yes, Namala, I want you to get out of that seat. And I want you to move your body. Now, it's up to you. And Vesta, I know that, jumping too high or being too energetic, you're not going to do what I'm doing. You just do what you can do. Move your body, though. Get up, even if it's a little dance, do a little jig, something. Move your body, get the blood flowing, get your heart rate up. And what you'll find is that motion will create emotion. And emotion is the exact thing that we need to enhance memory and the ability of the mind. So moving forward a little bit, when I got to age 19 or 20, I might have been 20 years old, I was sitting in a church meeting one time. And I remember this speaker got up and he began to address us. And the content of what he shared was unbelievable. It was rich. He had quotes. He had scripture that he memorized. He had all this information, poetry. And he shared all this information without any script or notes. And back then I thought it was amazing. See, this is before I'd seen TED Talks. Whereas today we see TED Talks and people do it all the time. It's not unusual for people to get up without notes and speak. But for me, at that time, this is going back, 20 something years ago, it was a very unusual thing. I'd never seen anyone as proficient and expert as he was with his delivery. And it was heartfelt. It was to the point. It was engaging. And I just sat there in awe. It was incredible. He was an African-American man. And the way he spoke was just unbelievable. And I was really impressed by it. And I thought to myself at that time, if only I could do that. Now, it wasn't until my late 20s that I stumbled upon some training from a man named Christopher Howard. And Christopher Howard taught some presentation and platform skills. And so I started really delving into this training. And I got the audio tapes, or back then it was on CD, I believe. And then later I transferred it to MP3. But I would go through these tapes or CDs over and over again, listening to this content. And I was just blown away by how proficient he was at speaking and how I could develop these skills as long as I had the tools and then work the tools. And so that's what I did. I began working these tools and working these skills.
Wow.
So Joseph has just come in. Joseph, are you going to jump on your laptop and do it? Or are you going to do it from here?
Do you have to do it here?
Okay, just take a seat and I'll be with you shortly. So my son Joseph walked in. Joseph and I are going to do a demonstration very shortly. And we're going to demonstrate the memory palace. And we've got a little skit that we do, some jokes. There is in the background, making use of himself. No, he's all right. He's a good kid. Can you see? You can see your hand. Yeah, he's nodding. All right, so where was I up to? I was talking about this speaker that I saw in, I was actually in Perth, Western Australia at the time. And then I went on to learn from Christopher Howard. I went on to learn those skills, and I've been practicing those skills ever since. And I remember the first time that I stood up without notes. Who's ever done it? Who's ever given a full presentation note-free? Yeah, you have done that, Leah. Good job. And it takes a lot of work. And for me, it was a lot of work, but I had my notes in my pocket. It was like a safety in case I needed to, I could pull them out. Who's ever had the experience where you're speaking and suddenly, like, nothing? You just blank. You just draw a blank and you just, I was working with a client one time and he had this happen where he drew an absolute blank. And he said it was really hard. He had all these people looking at him. This man was in his 50s and he'd never been lost for words before. And suddenly he's just standing there and he couldn't speak. His brain was blank and he never wanted that experience to happen again. So he came and saw me. We did some coaching and we helped him through that situation. So that was exciting. So what else have we got? Learning poetry. I also, when I was in my early 20s, there was a man that shared a lot of poetry and he would do those during his talks. And I decided to learn poetry. He said that he learned about 60 poems in his life. And so I started learning poems at that time, and I'm probably up around 35 poems. So I've got about 30 poems in my head that I could quote off. So when somebody shares a topic of interest, I have a poem almost for that topic, which is incredible. And it's great to just have that information with me. And sometimes in the morning, I'll go through these poems. I'll go over them in my mind. And occasionally I'll forget a verse or something like that if I haven't rehearsed the poem in a while, and I'll go back and look at the material again, get it back in my mind, and then it's there. We're right to go.